It's the I Can't Mom Today podcast with Heather, the new mom, and Vera, the seasoned mom. I Can't Mom Today.
Hey, this is Vera with another episode of I Can't Mom Today podcast. Unfortunately, Heather couldn't be here. She's sort of on vacation. It's a long story, but we had a very important guest that I've been wanting to get on the podcast now for several weeks. And with all of our crazy schedules, the mom schedules, and the Mimi schedules, it's been a little rough. So I wanted to go ahead and get my good friend, Kristal Franklin. She's the owner-operator of Gallops Family Center here in Florida. Known her for, gosh, how long now? It's 16 years?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, a long time, long time. And we'd been talking, Kristal and I had been talking about just the effects of the pandemic and the shutdowns and everything. And so I wanted to have Kristal on the show because of the effects that she's noticing, because, well, you have a preschool. Like, explain your operation so that way we can get into what you've been observing.
Yeah, so we have a licensed child care center here in Florida, and we service children 12 months through VPK, which is, going into kindergarten.
Okay. And then you also have like the prep school too.
Yes. So we also have school age programming. So after school summer camps for students from kindergarten to 7th grade. And then we also have a private school, which is kindergarten to 12th grade.
Yeah. So lots of kids.
Lots of kids.
It amazes me how much you handle in a day. And I can only imagine with the kids and the ages and the it's a lot.
It is a lot, but they are so fulfilling. They, every smile, every giggle, even the hard stuff. You learn so much from the kids when you're open to it.
Yes. Well, one thing too, before we get into the shutdowns and everything and the effects of that, one of the things that I marvel about, because we've talked obviously throughout the pandemic, is that you really managed to keep the virus at bay to some degree, considering all the kids you had in and out of there, right?
We did. So we actually didn't shut down. We put in a whole bunch of other mitigation to ensure that our building was safe to be here and be together. And we, through all of it, even now, through all of the, I don't know what variant we're on, we have had 16 positive cases in our space.
Right. Since the beginning, right?
Since the beginning. And we've had one traceable pass from someone in our building to someone else in our building.
Ah, okay. Well, I know because, my son, this is one of the ways that I met Kristal, was my son started going to karate there because you guys have karate lessons. And I've, after being at the karate school over the years, I always marveled. I was like, wow, she keeps this place pretty clean. So,
well, my grandma always said that if you keep a clean house, it doesn't matter when company stops by.
Very smart grandma. It's like when your mom tells you to wear clean underwear in case you get hit by a car.
Exactly, but they're no longer clean at the end. Yes.
That's true. So I wanted to establish that because that to me was amazing that you managed to keep the virus at bay. So your kids were lucky enough to be able to come in because you didn't have to shut down since you guys are a private organization, right?
Yes. So, the mandate came down from the county that said public facilities needed to close. I didn't think we were public because people pay to be here. We certainly had families that made the choice to stay home, and that was okay with us.
Yeah.
But at the same time, our county and our state was actually paying money for first responders' children because first responders didn't get the luxury to stay home. And so we had an influx of nurses and doctors and firemen and policemen, their children that needed somewhere to go because everyone had closed down, but they had to go to work. And so we had an influx of those kids during the beginning part. And then by the summer of 2020, people started like, okay, well, we have to start going back to work. We have to do whatever. And our I don't want to say normal, but our past clients started coming back as well.
I see. Okay. Well, that brings me now to the reason I really wanted you to have some time on here to talk about the things, because you've mentioned to me that you noticed differences in the kids after the shutdown, after, missing out on some of that socialization, especially the younger kids. And you've noticed some different kinds of behaviors, right?
Yes, our preschool students between that 2 and 5-year-old age are showing, and it's not just me. I've go to conferences. I'm in lots of early childhood groups. We, have lots of conversations amongst the industry, and we're seeing across the board that 2 to 5-year-old age range is really showing some tremendous trauma behaviors. And so for us, we are doing a lot of professional development in trauma-informed care, because these kids have gone through trauma.
Yeah.
And it's coming out in, it's coming out in various negative behaviors. We're seeing a lot of children who are aggressive, who don't know how to calm their own emotions. And that's, pretty typical for that age in some regard. Mm-hmm. But when you listen to the experts who are starting to talk about this topic, they're saying that during the pandemic, when we were told to, not touch each other, stay away from people, and, we all kind of put ourselves in a bubble. Mm-hmm. And for young children, when they can't see facial expressions because of masks, when they aren't being held and comforted because people are keeping a distance, or even when they are. So at home, when they're getting all of that love and they're getting all of that hugging and all of the things that they so desperately need, the parents are anxious. The parents are worried. The parents are stressed because the whole world didn't know what was happening, or would we return to what we consider normal. And so as you hug that little one, you're transferring all of that energy from yourself, all of that nervousness. So now this is what they think normal interaction feels like. And so now as they come back into the school setting, they're struggling with not being the center of attention. And they're struggling with, how do I interact with this other little person beside me? I didn't have to share before. I didn't have to listen before. I was kind of at home and could do my thing with my things. And so we're starting to just see these really stressed out children.
Wow. I mean, it makes complete sense. Even for me, I'm a little older than 5, and it was still really, because I'm a big, well, me, which is so funny over the years, because Kristal is not particularly touchy-feely, but I am. And so every once in a while, and we have a mutual friend too, who's not very touchy-feely. So every once in a while, I'll say to you guys, like, I'm coming in for a hug, look out, and they're like, okay, you can hug us. But I feel like there was with that period of time where we weren't really supposed to touch each other. I still, like, every once in a while now, thankfully everybody feels comfortable hugging each other and everything again. But there was a while there where it really felt strange. Like there was like a weird physical, I had to stop myself from getting too close, obviously, like a lot of people, but I don't know. I can't even describe the feeling, but I kind of felt like I had this emptiness,
Yeah. And I think that happened to, society at large. But our little people, so as adults, we can rationalize that. And we can say, oh, I know what it felt like before. And I want to get back to what it felt like before. So I'm going to, maybe put my fear or put my anxiety or put my stress over here in this little basket so that I can feel what it felt like before. But kids don't have that. they don't have this group of children, these younger children don't have the before.
Yeah.
So all they have is what is their reality, which is kind of prickly, and kind of distant, and
Nervous.
yeah,
Yeah.
they are just kind of these little prickly balls of energy. And they don't know how to process that because this is all they've known.
Ah,
And
yeah. See,
so,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
well, I was just going to say, and so as the older the child gets, you can see the older kids kind of used this as, you see them all the time in stores and whatnot. It'll be 100 degrees outside and the teenager will be in a hoodie. That's I'm trying to hide. I need to kind of withdraw just the normal teenager angst that we all had. They're not coming out of their hoodies. They're still just trying to be by themselves and be withdrawn. And it became easy for the older kids to live in that teenage world where I'm only going to talk to you through the screen. And when I'm out in public, I just don't want to be noticed. And so it's just, we can see it across the board. And so, as a collective, I think we got to really figure out how to help these little people come out of this and learn that there is another way. And it doesn't feel so prickly.
Yeah, well, I think you may have been the one that posted it. It was like a TikTok video and it was like a toddler little girl and everything was a hand sanitizer. Like she was trying to squeeze hand sanitizer, like pump hand, like no matter what it was, it could have been a fire hydrant, it could have been, it's just like, wait a minute, isn't there some hands? She's just so used to seeing everybody sanitizing their hands constantly all the time. So, I mean, I thought that was such an interesting like visual and realizing, oh my God, the little girl could barely talk. I mean, she was really little and she's obviously observing all this, and taking it all in.
It's their normal. We had a visitor come by to look at our facility just a couple of weeks ago and we were walking around. The visitor was wearing a mask. And we walked outside to the playground and a little 3-year-old came running over and asked her what virus she had.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, this is their normal.
Yeah.
And we have to learn how to understand their normal and how to transition them from what that normal is to something that's a little more warm and fuzzy.
Yeah. Well, and then from these conferences and everything that you've gone to, people you've talked to in the industry, are there any, is there anything that parents can do to try and help with that? Obviously, I mean, I think, your child is normally going to be at daycare or school a lot of the day, but when they're at home, is there anything that parents can do to try and help that?
So there are lots of, trauma-informed care classes that aren't just for educators. And I think that taking a class, just an online class, they're not hard, but they give you those eye-opening, oh, that's what I'm seeing. Okay, now I have an understanding of why when this happens and my child exhibits this behavior, this could be a response that I provide. And those, those key phrases you kind of learn over time if you're in the industry, but just at home, those courses really do make a difference because every behavior has a reason. Children aren't just exhibiting a behavior because they want to show a behavior. There's a reason behind that behavior. And so in order to change the behavior, if you only ever just address that behavior and you never address the reason that the behavior is coming out, you're never going to stop the behavior. And so these courses can help you have the reflection of, oh, I now understand what you're telling me when you behave it this way. And so I would just say, take those courses, do some studying. Unfortunately, the roadmap we've all been given from birth to 5, if you do all of these wonderful things, you're going to have this great child.
Mhm.
They're going to have to rewrite some of that.
You're not kidding.
So they're going to have to go back and say, children were born into trauma. And sadly, that has always been some children's path in life.
Oh, yeah.
Some children have always been born into trauma.
Yes.
But it was not the mass amount of people.
Oh, yes. I mean, this is worldwide.
Yes. And so we all have, we're all carrying trauma from this. And so we have to figure out how to process that and how to help these little people not end up with being an adult with, major anxiety and, the stress of being in social situations and all of these things, that comes from these early trauma moments.
So if you think people could probably find something, maybe just do a search on like trauma informed care online course, like a search.
Absolutely. Like yeah, okay. Absolutely. So in Florida, the Department of Children and Families actually has a very good course. I'm not sure if it's open to families. I think there's a section of it. Okay. And the other thing I would say is talk to your child care providers, talk to your child's teacher, and say, how are you? You guys are in partnership. And you are correct when you said that the majority of the time is typically with a caregiver. Mm-hmm. And so you have to make sure that you have your child somewhere where they're addressing the behaviors and the emotions in the same manner that you're going to do it at home. Because otherwise they're getting 2 sets of information. So I think, just have a conversation with your caregiver and say, we've noticed this at home. Even I'm not sure how to address it. How are you guys addressing it? And then take the techniques from your provider and apply those at home.
Yeah, well, that consistency, I'm sure, is helpful as well. Like you said, so there aren't 2 sets of rules or 2 sets of procedure or whatever you would say.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and I just heard somewhere, I can't remember where it was. And they were talking about children, it's something about how, children are being defiant. It's not. And I thought about that when you were saying about how the behavior is usually the result of something else. And it's not just them trying to, what this thing that I heard said, it's not just them trying to be defiant. And maybe like they might refuse to do their homework because they're afraid of getting something wrong. So there's an anxiety there. It's not because they're just being a turd and don't want to do their homework,
Right.
Like,
yeah.
There's some anxiety in there.
Yeah. So here, in our private school side of things, we still do all of the education of the 360 child. So when we start seeing a behavior in a child that wasn't there before, acting out, sleeping in class, all of these things that come out as you get older, we figure out why. And so we had a situation not too long ago where a student who normally wasn't having these behaviors all of a sudden was. And when we started to have a conversation about it, what we found out was they had a family member who had to leave their home and move in with them. And so they no longer had enough beds in the house.
Oh,
and so the student wasn't getting a good night's sleep. And so we found a resource and we had beds delivered. And, so there's a reason why behind everything. You just have to take the time to find it.
Yeah. Well, I love that because even as a parent, and I joke around about my big stinky 19-year-old whom you know very well.
Yes.
And he, sometimes, when he acts the way he does, your first reaction sometimes is just like, would you stop being such a jerk? Like,
right.
Please.
Yeah.
Because you're human as a parent, as a mom, I'm like, I'm so tired of you being a jerk to me sometimes. And instead of trying to think, okay, why is he being a jerk?
Right.
There got to be some reason. With him, a lot of times it's because he hasn't freaking eaten anything. So
Right.
like
He's hangry.
exactly, he's angry. So it's something simple like that even. But it is very easy as a parent because again, you got your own shiz going on that's
Yeah.
upsetting and that you've got to sort through. So sometimes it's not so easy to be like, oh, well, are you hungry? You're just like, ah,
Right. Yeah. And, a common phrase that a lot of adults use with children when they're in those behavior moments
Mhm.
is you should have known better.
Oh, yeah.
And why should they have known better?
Yeah.
Where did they learn the better?
Yeah.
So especially with, 19-year-olds,
Mhm.
their frontal lobe is turned off until maybe they're 25. So knowing better and doing better are two vastly different things. You can rationally know better, but
Mhm.
not have the ability to do better
Mhm.
until you have been provided that path. So when you ask your child, well, what else? That was a bad decision. What other decision could you have made? And they're looking at you and saying in their head, of course, most of them
Mhm.
will say, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Right.
made the choice I thought was best in the moment,
Right. Sounded good.
Yeah, thought it was a good idea.
Mhm.
So, we're here to make sure they have that other thing. Well, maybe you should have tried this. And so if you provide the pathway, our hope is that in an environment where they're safe and they're secure and they feel validated and they have a relationship with their caregivers, then they're free to make that other choice. And so that's kind of the space that early childhood, really everybody working with children should make sure that the space that the kids are in is a space to be free to make the mistakes,
Mhm.
and not be the end point there.
Mm.
Make sure you're going back and redefining the pathway so that they can make another choice the next time, because there'll be a next time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And a next time, and a next time, and a next
Exactly.
time.
Exactly. And so we have to find, and that's what a lot of the training does, is it teaches you to leave your emotional response
Mhm.
out of the equation and
Mhm.
remember that you're building the neural pathways that make this little person grow up to be somebody who has a solid foundation.
Mm. Yeah, and that's often hard to think about in the moment, but I
Of
think like a
course.
lot of things. I mean, even like with Luke, sometimes it's almost like it takes practice,
Of course it does. Yeah. I mean, because we're human and we
Mhm.
have our own trauma that has brought us to that exact moment. And
Mhm.
sometimes the behavior is our trigger.
Mhm.
And so we have to, you know, pocket who we are, but sometimes we get it wrong.
Yeah.
And you go back and you say you got it wrong.
Yeah.
Because then that allows them, the little people, to understand that even when they get it wrong,
Mhm.
it's going to be okay again the next time.
Yeah. Yeah. That the mistake isn't the end of the world.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. This isn't the end of it. There'll be lots
Yes.
more coming forward.
Dear Lord.
Yeah. But, so I think as a society, we just have to, we have to figure out how to rebuild our relationships.
Mhm.
We lost a lot in a good chunk of 2 years. And
Yeah.
some people won't want to go back to building close knit relationships and being in an intimate space with other people.
Yeah.
But our kids have to learn how to live in a space where they are connected.
Mhm.
And if we don't go back and teach those pathways, I think we might be in a worse spot than we are now.
Yeah, like, flash forward a decade from now when those kids are driving and
Yeah, absolutely. And when their frontal lobe gets turned off.
Yeah, exactly. Perfume and gasoline. That's
Yes,
about boys. It's like
exactly.
you made so much sense until about a year ago, and now you're just like a mess.
Yes.
So, well, I really appreciate your time, Kristal. And again, if anybody wants to do a search, I'll put in our show notes to do a search on trauma informed care. And it may be that your state, or like we have Department of Children and Families. I know some states it's what Children Protective Services. All those, they might offer something.
Yeah, and there's also early learning coalitions are in every state.
Okay.
And they typically do a lot of community outreach. And so I would say look up your early learning childhood or coalitions and see what kind of programs they have.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, because I would imagine a lot of those would be free, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
a lot, most all of those.
Okay, because that's, especially if I have a little one, of course, again, my big stinky 19-year-old, it affected him too.
Of course it did. It affected all of us.
So yeah, so it's good to know there's some resources out there, and if that you're not alone.
Exactly. Yes, this is our new normal for a while.
Exactly. So, and again, if anybody wants to email us, ican'tmomtodaypodcast@gmail.com. And of course, we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter if you want to reach out to us that way. And thanks again so much, Kristal, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Till next time.
Bye.